Welcome to Geekery. I am the Gneech.
And I am InkBlitz. And today we are talking about respect at the table. And to respect
Yes.
you, we're not doing a cheesy intro.
Yeah, pretty much. D&D or whatever tabletop game you like to play is, we've already had the episode on how it's a team sport, but also it's just at its most basic level. It's a bunch of friends uh, sitting around a table making up stories with each other, and uh, that requires that you have a certain level of regard. You don't have to be pals, but you do have to at least respect each other, give each other space to operate and stuff like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the ramifications of that, like how it works and what it might look like.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
the D&D or any other tabletop game, they're social games. Like you may be driving characters that are off to storm the gates of
Moria,
Moria.
yeah, the Gates of Moira is something else, and
We might be
she's
trying
very
to
annoyed at you for having stormed her gates. But
Yeah, you might be playing characters that are storming the gates of some faraway castle, but you're still people. You're still sitting around a table together, and you still have to respect each other. You respect the other players, respect the DM. Um, Usually, the respect at the table comes. You start to develop it at what people consider as session zero. It's sort of a baseline not only for the game, but it's also a baseline for what is expected in terms of respect at the table between you and the DM and the other players,
yeah,
whether that
we're
is
talking.
in person or that is online.
Yeah, we're talking at a very meta level here, especially at session zero, where it's things like, you know, if you're gathering at somebody's house, which we're not doing because of pandemic right now, but under normal circumstances, if you're gathering at somebody's house, what are their expectations about when you
Right.
arrive, when you leave? Do you bring food? Are you expected to provide snacks for the group?
Right.
Um, and stuff like don't park on the neighbor's driveway. Just you know, basic etiquette stuff. But it's also things like at the table. What is the role of the DM? What is the role of other players? And um, the whole point of it is to sort of go in with everybody having the same assumptions.
Right. And
You
whether
know,
whether that is who brings snacks or who brings pop or
yeah,
uh, what are you doing at the table, or how you act at the table. Does the DM not allow you to have your devices at the table? That respecting the DM's wishes to not have your phones or your tablets at the table is part of that respect, and also convincing the DM to let you actually use them is part of the respect
yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of this stuff boils down to the same kind of rules that you would have, for online gaming. It's the same kind of rules you would have for working from home or going to school from home, etc.
But they're
The
not being
DM
paid.
is, yeah, hopefully, or presumably. But I mean, the DM is not. Uh, you're not gonna like get in trouble if you're looking away like you might do in a school or a work environment. But you want the DM to know that you're present and listening, and paying attention to the game. And you also want to be not like disrupting the rest of the game.
Yeah, and these are
Um,
things you should be asking about at session zero. Like, you should be asking if there's any special uh, rules the DM wants, or you should be getting to know the other people during session zero and understanding uh, the the guidelines.
mhm.
There's the space, the borders that will be present.
Yeah, yeah. One of the big ones, one of the big issues in a group dynamic, is giving each other space, letting each other. We've talked before about everybody getting their moment, or you know, not stepping on other players' goals. If somebody has a plan they want to play out, let them play it out. Don't don't like don't deliberately hog the spotlight. Sometimes, your character is the one who has a great solution or is the one who can defeat the bad guy or whatever. And sometimes your job is to, you know, root for the other players.
All right.
And, and you don't want to be, you don't want like to be going me all the time. You want to go back and forth. And as a DM, you need to sort of be the final arbiter on that. You need to make sure that everybody's getting some time. But as a player, you also want to do your part. I mean, you want to help the DM so that you also get your time.
And of course,
Um,
we talked about this in the team sport video as well, but it's also not just the social constructs. It's also understanding how people react to one another, or as some things that we run into, how people react to uh, talking to each other online. So
mhm,
it's session zero. You kind of pay attention to everyone and see, do different people like have a worse computer or a worse microphone? Do you need to pause every so often to make sure that other people are done speaking, or do you need to pay more attention to, like, do you need to pay attention to the webcams more if you have webcams? Uh, Little things like that. Like that, it's not really something that a lot of gamers I feel have gotten the hang of, because
mhm.
there's definitely an etiquette and a difficulty barrier to online gaming.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, and it's not something you can just set and be done either. You have to monitor as you go along.
right, you
You
can
know, in our
accidentally stop over people. You can accidentally prevent people from giving them space.
Yeah, yeah, like in our last session, uh, Laurie literally sits like 3 feet from me over here at her computer when we're playing, and so in order to not have her echoing, I have her muted
Mhm.
on Discord, and she's talking in my ear. But um, in the last session, she wanted to do a thing with her character. She'd figured out that these trolls required both fire and ice, and she wanted to try it. But I didn't realize that's what she was trying to get at. So, everybody else seemed to have sort of given up, and so the trolls were going to get away.
Yeah, we
And
couldn't get it.
finally, yeah, finally, I noticed she's over there waving at me over here because I didn't hear her speaking over everybody else online. And I totally didn't mean to like negate her or ignore her. I just didn't see that she was trying to get my attention until it was almost too late. And that's the thing where when it pops up, you'd have to address and oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. You know
Right.
please do what you want to do, or etc. And as a DM, the respect is to extend that moment of, hey, do your thing. And as a player, the respect is to not get in a twist about it, right? To yes, mistakes happen, but it's been addressed and we're all good. um,
But
there's an old adage that I like to follow, which is be slow to give offense, be slow to take offense, which is exactly what you need to do in this kind of an environment.
now, regardless of how hardware issues aside, regardless of uh, well-meaning can come in different ways. Like, you can be well-meaning when you're trying to coach someone in how they should play their character, or a DM trying to coach someone how to play, and it it may come off as a bit sour, like you're trying to tell someone how to play. This comes a lot more when you have very experienced players who know the rules like the back of their hand, and
Mm,
you may have other inexperienced players who don't really know what they're doing but take longer time to decide,
yeah.
and you may
or
have
or you
those.
have an optimizer versus somebody who just
Yeah,
is there to roll dice and hang out.
but that optimizer may feel the urge to try and optimize that other player's character when they don't really need it or want it, and it can come off as a bit bossy. um, it's it's kind of like sometimes you just want to help someone, you feel like you're helping, and it's a careful balance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when all else fails, either wait to be asked or ask, "Would you like a suggestion?"
Right.
So that everybody involved is, you've been given permission to make your suggestion. Don't just blurt it out. Attack this guy or use this power or whatever. Um, in the heat of the moment, I'm just as guilty as anybody. In the heat of the moment, I'm like,
Yeah, me
"Oh, you
too.
could totally do this cool thing,"
I've
and
done the same thing.
yeah, and we all do it, and we all try to keep it in under control. But it's one of those things, particularly if you have a mix of hardcore and casual players or experienced new players, like you said, you really gotta have to watch it because after a while, the people who are being coached are going to be like, they're going to react. They're going to
Right.
be like, "This is my character. I want to do what I want to do," or "Why am I here? Why don't you just play my
Yeah, you
character?"
might have a really cool idea, and that's awesome. Like, but
Yeah,
use it for your character. Let other people make their own choices, and it's difficult, especially
yeah.
because the part of the game is for teamwork,
Yeah,
and
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 you can turn a coaching bit into a role playing moment in the game. You can have your character, whether you do it in voice or not. Just my character says hit the big one, or
yeah,
use a fireball, or do a barrel roll, or whatever your
make
suggestion is.
yes, make it role play. Don't come out of character and say you should do this. Say your character takes like a free action or a bonus action to shout or do something
Yeah,
to encourage the other character to do it. Make it a role play lesson. Make it interesting.
yeah. One of the principles that I have in my game master credo, which we still need to talk about sometime.
Someday we're gonna get there.
Yeah, is that the players, the characters in the world are basically having the same sorts of conversation that the players are, viewed through the world lens. So theoretically, if you and the other players are sort of discussing, what is our plan for doing this, I sort of assume that your characters are huddled around trying to make a plan too, unless you specifically say otherwise. But it is one of those things where it would be better if you call it out. You
Right.
just say explicitly that my character is doing this. And sometimes the with the newer players, etc., they want to figure out what they're doing, and it takes the time. If you've never played a wizard before, you've got 6 different spells that you've. Oh, that one's a combat spell. I got that. That one is a. I'm not sure what that one
I don't know
does.
what that one
And
does at all. What does this one do?
yeah, yeah. Mordenkainen's fickle digit. What does that do? So and some more. So there's some other etiquette stuff around the table. For every role playing game, you want to go figure out what to do about dice.
Yes.
Um, there's the player who's always fiddling with their dice because they've got ADHD or whatever, um, and that's okay, except that they always drop it just before they need to make a roll, and so now everybody's waiting on them to hunt down their die that went rolling off. So you want to have a bucket of dice, or have your actual rolls be in your gaming table, your
Also,
virtual
dice are
tabletop, or
really
something like that.
annoying, especially when you're clicking them like
Yeah,
over a microphone.
yeah. Or they're clattering on the table, and everybody else gets in their headphones, things like that.
But there's
So
also considering the red etiquette towards rolling dice for the towards the DM or rolling the dice towards the game. If there's a tendency for more experienced role players to want to really move the game on and to just start rolling dice before the DM has even said anything or
yeah,
before
they'll
anything
anticipate.
actually any action happens. They'll anticipate it
Yeah,
before the DM calls for it. But what really should happen is that the DM should call for the roll, or you should ask to make a roll before you do the roll, or wait
yeah.
for
Well, I
it.
mean, I would say don't even ask to make a roll. The way the game is supposed to work is the DM describes the situation. You tell the DM what you want to do. The DM educates some way, whether it's yes, that happens, no, that doesn't happen, that may or may not happen. Roll some dice.
Right.
So the tendency to think of you know I'm in a room. I'm looking around. Can I make a perception check to see what's here? You know, that the DM has a couple of possible reactions to that. One is you don't need to make a perception check. I'll tell you what's here, right? Um, and or it could be, the DM is like, why are you rolling dice until I tell you to roll dice?
Right.
And it's like jumping the gun. The DM sets up situations, creates scenarios, um, and you're like trying to do their job for them
A
by
little bit.
grasping onto the rules. And this is a matter of style, uh, but at a lot of tables, particularly, and certainly when I'm the DM, I don't want you thinking about your character sheet. I want you thinking about the world and your character, right?
Yeah, pay attention
And
to what the
so,
DM is saying. Pay attention to the plot that you're a part of. Or,
yeah,
are you in the middle of a conversation with an NPC? You should be paying attention to that
yeah,
and your character's actions and not the mechanics so
yeah,
much.
yeah. So when you jump in with, can I make a perception check to see what's in the room? You know, you've sort of blown us all out of the game world by making us think about the character sheets, making us think about the dice, making us think about what is your perception bonus, right? Instead of what is the room. Again, I'm guilty of it.
We
I
all
tend
are.
to only do I tend to only do it in combat, and that's some of that is because,
I'm,
like, I created this stunt system that we use. So a lot of
yes,
times I want to,
you want to use it.
when I yeah, when I have Shady want to engage with it, I'm like, okay, I'm activating this subset of this rule set in order to achieve this action because I'm familiar with it, right? But I tend to that's when I tend to do it. But uh, it's even then, and really, I should be saying what I want my character to achieve first, and then we're looking at the rules.
Yeah, and I sort of do it during uh, conversations, like when we're talking with NPCs and we're trying to figure out, well, is that an NPC actually lying, or it's like, can I tell they're lying? It's kind of like, can I roll insight?
Yeah, yeah, and
It's
like,
kind of hard to really discern that one, and especially
yeah, and that's I think some of that comes from uh, like players have been around a while, are trained to sort of look for the twist, right? So, what is this NPC not telling me? Or, what is the hidden thing in the room? Where's a trap that's going to kill me? Where's the pit with the gelatinous cube in it?
it's everywhere.
That kind of thing.
You are in
You
the
know,
you're in the gelatinous cube right now. You just don't even know
yep,
it.
yep. And so it's sort of a natural, the character's paranoia of being, that just would come from being a professional adventurer, is sort of seeping through to the players wanting to engage in the rules all the time. But um, that's one of those things where it's not exactly rude, but it's not good form
And
to
also,
preempt the DM.
another good form is kind of the opposite, is not being really prepared with what you're going to do, especially in combat. Like if you're going through combat, each person has several seconds to say what their character is going to do and trying to resolve that. And then when it
Mm.
comes to your turn, if you're sitting there and not really sure what you're going to do, and it takes you another 5 minutes to think about it and just decide what's going to happen, pick out your spells, that's slowing down combat. That's stopping combat for those
Yeah,
five, however long minutes it takes for you to figure out what to do. And it it kind of irritates the other players, and it also pulls the entire party out of the game for a little while.
mm.
Um,
It's
so
particularly a problem with large group.
yes,
And that there's the flip side of that is your turn in a large group. Your turn is probably a good 5 or 6 minutes away. So if you decide now what you're going to do, by the time your turn rolls around, the situation has
that's
changed.
also true.
So you need to have a little wiggle room around that. But yeah, when you can anticipate that your turn is coming, start looking at what the situation is now. I don't know how many turns we've all started with. Well, that just threw all of my plans out the window. And
Usually when I
so
start pausing, that means, oh, I was thinking about something completely different, and now I need to catch up and
yeah,
rethink everything.
yeah. Um, but some of that is also again with the players looking for the twist, the relentless optimization, the wanting to do the right thing. Um, so like getting into analysis paralysis at the beginning of your turn and slowing things down. Uh, it's D&D. Most of the time, it can only go so wrong, right? So if you got to fight or attack something, if you've got a wizard cast a spell,
Right.
don't get too clever
It doesn't have to be
because
the
we're all trying to go quick.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a clever, cool thing every time. Sometimes you just swing the sword. And
Yeah,
I am guilty of always trying to come up with something clever to do. And that's why I always love, half casters, because
hmm
usually they're going to have something clever to do, either with a spell or is one of their neat abilities. But it's sometimes it just comes down to throw a cantrip,
yeah,
swing a sword, and it doesn't have to always be, well, I'm looking for every angle in the room.
yeah. But we're talking about anticipating rule uses. There's also you know if you know the rules and the DM gets it wrong or makes a ruling that you don't agree with, or um, it could be uh, just as simple as the DM is like, you open the door and there's an enormous lizard. Oh, we attack it. What do you mean you attack it? It breathes fire on you and you all die. You didn't say a dragon. You said an enormous lizard.
Well, that could have been a salamander.
Yeah. So DMs are not perfect.
No,
And there's sort of the the low level. Uh, Wait, you said there were zombies. Now there are whites. And the DM will be like, "Sorry, I meant whites," or "No, I meant zombies," or "You thought they were zombies. They're actually whites." It's something. And that can be resolved quickly. But and then if the DM is like, you know, pulls out a says the wizard casts fireball and you don't get to make a saving throw on it, you know, that's a
that's
pretty big,
yeah, that's a really big thing to
you
say.
know,
You just don't get a saving throw, and
yeah.
I have been guilty of not offering saving throws, and that's totally on me in my newer, younger DM days.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
there's also like sometimes the DM just gets it wrong. They may not be correct, but at the same time, do you correct them then at the
Mhm.
table, or do you wait until after things have resolved when it may? It comes down to what how does it flow? Like
Yeah.
it may feel bad at the time, but at the same time, accepting what they say right now will
Mhm.
continue the flow of the game, and ultimately the choice most of the time, if small choices or small snafus don't make a huge uh, are not huge issues, and you can bring it up with
Yeah.
a DM after the game
Mhm.
when it's not going to slow down things.
Yeah, and sometimes players get it wrong too.
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah,
it's not
it's also
you.
true.
You may think the DM screwed up and be like, "Hey, this is not right," and the DM, pull out the book and says, "Well, the rules say A, that I'm right, and B, that you're a jerk," right? So you don't want to just automatically uh, throw your hat in the ring, but um, it's sometimes you may also disagree. Especially 5e has a lot of interpretation.
Right.
You know, third edition, fourth edition, they had the rules so cut and dried that the DM was almost like a robot. 5e threw that out. Um, so there's a lot of sort of wiggle room. But at the end of the day, most of the time, if you trust your DM and DM says, I've looked it over and this is how I want to do it, trust them. Let them,
Yeah, it's
say, okay, that's the way it is, and the two of you can hash it out all you want later. Um, you and I have had disagreements about all kinds of things, so but we talked it out,
yeah, and
and it's
it's
fine.
communication with your DM and communication with the other players is huge. Um, Not only in rules, but also just in the game in general. Because at the end of the day, it is still just a game. It is it's a special social sort of game,
Yeah,
but it's still a game. Like we are coming into a room or getting into a group chat with each other to enjoy a game that pulls us out of reality for a little while and
yeah,
to have fun. It's
yeah,
that's the most important part of all of this is that it's there to have fun.
yeah. We got elves and dragons here, folk. It's not super serious.
I'm sorry to ruin it for everyone, but elves and dragons are not real. We're here to have we're having fun in a fantasy or sci-fi world where these do
Yeah,
exist, and takes us away from politics and other crap.
yeah, yeah. I mean, just the point is that it's not worth getting bent about, right? It's it's a silly game. It's You're supposed to be having fun, and so if you're getting wound up, you know, look to see what else is going on there, because it's not the game that's the problem. You know, I don't know. I think that's covered it really. You
I
got anything?
think, yeah. I mean, other than saying the other player's fun is just as important as yours. Like, it's you are
Yeah,
here to have fun, they are here to have fun as well, and the DM too. If all of you are here to have fun, don't spit on the other people's fun.
yeah,
Don't give the DM a reason to say rocks fall, you all die,
yeah.
and you.
Or worse, don't give the DM a reason to say we don't want you to come back next week.
I mean, that is the extreme version, yes,
Yeah, yeah,
but you don't. I'm saying don't give reasons for people to bring things out of character to in character, and vice versa.
yep. All right. So, looking at topics for next time, we've got a couple that were requested by viewers
Yeah,
here.
these are
One is
interesting,
making the game fun for the DM.
which is very
Uh,
important.
yeah, and what can players do to make it more fun for the DM? And as somebody who's DM half the time now instead of all the time now, certainly I'm very invested in the idea.
And as we
But
outlined, it's important for the DM to have fun as well.
Yeah, and also as a player who's very happy to have somebody else DMing and wanting them to do it more, I very much am very interested in this topic. So,
Uh,
um,
there's also another one that was viewer requested is expanding the written adventure. So
yeah,
a lot of times I started out doing written adventures off of DM's Guild that I just pulled off there and ran for my group. How do you go beyond those though? How do you
yeah,
take those and turn them into something bigger that you can, becomes Lord of the Rings? Like you start in
yeah.
this little hodunk town with a bunch of hobbits. How does it become something that is
Yeah.
totally
Well, I mean, there's
yours?
there's fleshing out individual adventures, and then there's tying adventures into a grand campaign, and they're both sort of related. You kind of use the same skills for those. And the other one is one that we just still have on our list is remixing, respecking, or retiring.
We haven't done it yet.
Uh, yeah, we haven't done it yet. So if a character's not working, do you rebuild the character? Do you see if you can come up with a way to make the character more interesting, or is it just time to
Let him
have them
go.
ride off into the sunset and do something else?
We've all done it.
Yep. Uh, so any of those are topics that we would love to take on. Pick up, let us know in the comments what you would rather hear, or if you want some other topic entirely, let us know what it is, because we love getting these
Yeah,
requests.
we're willing to
It's
talk
it's
about
really
like anything geekery related, anything
yep,
D&D, anything tabletop. Please, if
yep,
you have any ideas for us, we will gladly talk about it for a half hour
yeah. And
to
it doesn't
45
it
minutes.
doesn't have to be D&D. We've just sort of defaulted to that. We like all kinds of geeky nonsense. So you want us to talk about the furry fandom? You want us to talk about Wonder
Yeah,
Woman? You want us to talk about Star Wars? We'll do it.
we'll talk about it.
Uh, yeah. And as always, I want to plug my Patreon, because that's how I make my living. Um, I've got various different levels depending on how excited you want to get into it. I mostly uh, put up art there, but I also do some writing, and so the different levels get access to
Very good stuff.
works in progress or variations, on different levels of adultness and all kinds of stuff like
There's the
that.
sauciness stuff there sometimes. I recommend going and subscribing to his Patreon. There's good stuff.
Thank you.
I would also like to plug my I would also like to plug my Twitch. I
Yeah,
do have a
that's
Twitch stream now.
that's really starting to take
It
off.
is a little bit. I just reached affiliate, so that
Yeah,
should. I've set up a couple of new toys for my watchers to play with and throw me off
I love
with.
I love that the skin you have in Beat Saber. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I do mostly gaming. I do VR gaming with Beat Saber every Wednesday, and then Friday and Sunday I do various whatever game I'm playing currently.
And it wouldn't be a YouTube channel without, please like and subscribe and hit the little bell icon for notifications. Um, I feel cheesy as heck saying it, but it really does.
But
It
you
really
have to
does
remind
help us,
people.
Yeah, and uh, and honestly, we hope you actually do like and subscribe because we love talking to you and we love to hear from you. So, with that, we will see you next time.
Thank you for watching.
Take it easy. Deep breath.
Center.
Yeah. All right. Hello and welcome to Geekery. I am the Gneech.
And I am InkBlitz, and welcome to our episode on.
On our episode on forgetting our lines.
It's just gone. It was just totally
It's just
gone.